Hello, everybody on not Instagram. We tried to go live on Instagram. I keep trying. They keep telling me that I'm too old to get on Instagram. But we are live on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter. And if you're viewing us somewhere else, please let us know. It's possible we're streaming in places I'm not even aware of. Please leave comments, questions. We want to hear from you throughout this. This is an interactive experience, and we want to know that you're out there. So leave your comments in whichever platform you are viewing this from. Today on the water cooler, we are here with Mike Sproge. This is really special because I never get to see this guy. Joking, I get to see this guy very often. We actually meet up about once a week for sort of accountability meetings, and Mike is a close friend and old friend and colleague and really mentor for me, especially in the area of sales, because as I tell Mike all the time, I hate selling, I'm horrible at selling, and he tells me neither of those things are true, but I don't know how they're not true because I'm pretty convinced that I hate selling and that I'm horrible at selling. So why are we talking about sales on a live stream that's really dedicated to the psychology of work, and really we focus on things internal to the business environment? Well, Mike Sproge has been selling one of the most difficult products or services in the world, perhaps, for what's it been, like a decade, something like that? Hey, Steve.
It's coming up on 10 years in the industry, yes.
Wow. So for 10 years, this guy has been selling credit card merchant services to restaurants and businesses of all kinds. And if you've ever owned a business, you know that these guys come knocking on your door all the time. They're always trying to sell hard and whatnot. Mike isn't like that. He's got this special sort of quality to him where when he comes and starts selling, it seems like he's really there to help. And I've always been incredibly impressed by that. So he's the owner and founder of Old Line Payments, where he helps with point of sale, merchant services, all of your payment needs. And he's here to talk to us today about why everything that you do, while few of you probably are knocking on doors trying to sell credit card terminals, everything you do is sales. So we're going to be talking about how to sell to your boss, how to sell to your employees, how to sell to your colleagues. And Mike, with his incredible background within not just merchant services, but also sales coaching, and also as a restaurateur himself, Mike is going to offer us some really valuable insights into what we could be doing better with our messaging when we're speaking to those people within our organization that matter most. Mike, welcome to the water cooler.
David, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. It's been an adventure watching you get this off the ground and getting to check out the first couple, and truly honored to be here and talking with you today about how sales kind of invades everything that we do at work.
Right. Yeah, really, it's such a pleasure having you here because when I think of sales on the most surface level, I don't have really great thoughts about it. Like I think of, a slimy, sleazy sales guy. No offense. Mike knows I'm not describing him, but that's what I think of. Somebody who's trying to force a service or product on me that I don't need. But when you and I have reframed this, the truth is that within HR, within leadership, everything you're doing is selling. Your issues selling. You're selling change. You're selling all of these different things to your employees, your supervisors, your colleagues. Why do people think of sales in this sort of negative light? And what's the deal with sales in reality, in your point of view?
I mean, it's a great question, David. I think that for most of us, we get our impression and our opinions of selling from experiences that we've had. Those of us that have ever tried to go and buy a car, you walk into that experience with dread. No one really enjoys having that initial walk up. There are a few folks that revel in that experience, but for the most part, it feels like a very confrontational, very combative experience. You've seen certain companies that have tried to change that. CarMax, for example, has a no haggle price, and they've taken that approach to try to get that sort of confrontation out of that sales experience that many of us don't really want. A lot of us have impressions of sales of maybe a door-to-door salesman, trying to knock on your door, interrupting dinner, and the Fuller Brush guy, or encyclopedia salesman back when we were kids, back when encyclopedias were still 47 book things on your bookshelf.
And this is why it didn't let us into Instagram. Bring up encyclopedias.
we remember encyclopedias that were disqualified from as I bug my children, I call it the gram. Get a roll every time I say that. So our experiences sort of inform how we view sales, and for the most part, we have this impression that sales is it's a nuisance. It is somebody trying to take our money or take advantage. And there's some good history with that to back that up. People have been conned. I think that anyone that is familiar with Bernie Madoff was a hell of a salesman, right? Made a whole lot of money disappear really quickly and for a long time. That was a sales con that happened. You think about the carnival barkers or the guys on the Midway that will separate you from your dollar. That's kind of that great American sales pitch. And I'll stop there. There was another example I was gonna say, but we'll reserve that. But there's a long history in America of sales being something that is suspicious or kind of slimy, or something that is to be distrusted. I ended up in sales working with my family's lumber business. When I was 13, I started doing sales conferences. So I would be at one of those big convention halls, standing in a booth, with my little Dr. Seuss tie on, khaki pants, and talking to people about the lumber that we were selling, that we were importing. And I learned the pitch, and I said that pitch probably 100, 140 times a weekend, collecting information from customers, and then doing the follow-up calls, because this was all pre-email, the following week. Right. So that's how I started in sales, was just, basically as a spokesperson for a company, doing the pitch again and again and again. And, I can still remember a lot of that information.
Well, can I stop you right there? Because you
Sure.
just said, you just brought something up, which I think is like maybe something that's at the core of my discomfort with sales. And a lot of leaders sort of discomfort with sales sometimes. And that is the pitch, right? You talked about rehearsing the pitch, and you go over it and over it, and then you deliver the same pitch again and again. What does the pitch mean in a world that is now so focused on authenticity? When I speak with leaders about leadership and culture and things like that, we stress authenticity so much. And for me, and I'm probably going to play devil's advocate and the cynic here the entire time, and it's not an act, but with me, sales feels inauthentic at its core. It's all about the dance, but the dance seems like everybody knows what the next move is anyway, and it all seems very coordinated and inauthentic.
Yeah, David, I think that much like your field with HR and IO, that is a really evolving art form. The things that we're talking about now in HR circles and in management levels are completely different than they were 5 years ago. COVID has turned even more things on its head now that we're talking about mandates and work from home and, work-life balance has taken a whole different shift. Sales itself is an evolving science. I think that kind of idea from the 50s, 60s, 70s of that hard charging salesman, for a while, I had the privilege to work for 𝗩𝗡𝗥𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧 and Company, which is a fantastic sales coaching organization. They teach on the Sandler sales training model. And if anyone has any interest in checking that out, I'd be more than happy to connect you with Matt or Doug or any of the guys over there. Really a terrific company. Taught me, it was like a master's and a doctorate program in sales. I had the privilege to work there for a while. And the idea there was to take sales to that next level, to take the theory and the thought behind it and turn it on its head a little bit. Inevitably, when we were talking with groups, we would ask them about sales. And what would always come up is the very famous David Mamet movie, Glengarry Glen Ross. And there's this iconic scene where Alec Baldwin walks in the room and it's all these guys, I think they're selling siding. And Alec Baldwin comes in and he's the ass kicker. And he tells people, coffee, put that coffee down. Coffee is for closers. And that's we get that all the time. Coffee is for closers. And Alec Baldwin is this hard driving person. And I have seen sales managers use that as the example of what you should do in a sales interaction. Okay. And it's awful. And if you watch the movie, Mamet makes it clear Alec Baldwin is not the hero of that movie. It's not. That is not what he wants you to take away. And certainly anyone that tries to sell like that is going to face some obstacles. What the folks at Sandler and what I think that if you think about it for a moment, you'll find is that people make the purchasing decisions that they have for their own reasons. We'll say that again. People buy because they have reasons themselves of why they want to buy something. Sometimes, if we are very lucky, when we are going through our pitch and talking about all our great features and benefits, which is kind of the traditional selling style, something that we say will trigger in that person, yes, that is a feature or benefit that will meet a need that I have. And so we can get lucky by doing the pitch. And if we do enough pitches to enough people, we should have some percentage of successful close rates. But man, that's exhausting. And you have to do a lot of pitches to hopefully get to a point where you're talking to somebody that just happens to have the need that you address at that day, at that time. And it's a tough way to sell. It's a tough way to make a living. And I have seen people who are absolutely masterful at that. They have absolutely no fear of rejection. They have no fear of communicating. They have no fear of being told no. They just put their head down and charge right through, and they'll talk to 120 people until they get the numbers that they need. That is terrifying for a lot of people. And a lot of people want no part of that. We have run cold call trainings where after 5 cold calls, people just give up. They're like, I'm not doing this anymore. I can't do it. I'm not going to make one more phone call. It's 5-6 phone calls into the training. It's an intimidating and kind of scary idea that you're going to call somebody and bother them and try to get them to do something that you really want them to do, but maybe they don't want to do. Right. And that's, I think, when we talk about psychology, sales is 100% based in psychology and overcoming some of the stuff that's inside. Yeah. Now we've got some techniques and some ideas behind that can make things a little bit easier. And again, a lot of this is based on the Sandler model, and happy to introduce you to Matt and the guys at 𝗩𝗡𝗥𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧. What I mentioned before is that your customer, and I know that we're going to be talking about kind of internal sales. So when I say customer, I want you to also think about maybe it's your manager, maybe it's your employee, maybe it is your colleague. Maybe it's another divisional director if you're at that level, at that director level that you're trying to get something to do. That person is going to have their own motivations, their own reasons, their own needs that they are looking to meet. And anything that you attempt to do is going to have to align with what they're trying to do, for that to be successful. I want to say that one more time. People make purchase decisions, people make agreements because it is their own needs that are being met. You can have absolutely the best reasons in the world why somebody should do something. And if you have not met their internal need, if you have not checked the box in their head, it's not going to happen, or it's not going to be very successful. I have a great friend who is a tremendous Baltimore Orioles fan. And if you have paying, if you're paying any attention to what the Orioles are up to right now, it is a brutal time to be a Baltimore Orioles fan. I was born in the Bronx. I grew up as a Yankee fan and remain one to this day. I have 27 World Championship rings. I've got tradition. I've got Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, you name it. I've got all these reasons why my buddy Ralph should be a Yankees fan. Never been able to figure out his internal motivation why he's an Orioles fan. And it's that sort of thinking that you need to keep in mind is we do what we do based on our internal drivers, but based on our own emotions and our own needs. And selling needs to evolve into a place where you are discovering what those are and then figuring out a way that your ideas, your concepts, your products, sometimes it is products, can meet those needs.
Right. You just gave me so much valuable information here, and I have so many questions. And by the way, if you're viewing this from wherever you're viewing it and you have questions, please chime in. We'll throw those up for Mike, especially if they're insulting to salespeople. Throw them up, challenge them a little bit. But you left me with two very specific questions, but I'll only hit you up with one at a time. One is what you just talked about, how people act based on their own needs and emotions. So specifically, I think that everybody within the HR field, within IOs are very busy with this right now, within leadership throughout industry. Everybody seems to be dealing with change in extraordinary amounts of change right now. And change is almost by definition uncomfortable. And it's almost like a necessary evil from the view of employees, and that's only if you convince them that it's necessary to begin with. When we're selling change, it's almost like you could put things in two buckets, and it's not always very easy to figure out which bucket something goes into, but those buckets really align with what you're talking about, needs and emotions. Some things are very rational and some things are very emotional. When you're trying to sell a change initiative to your employees, let's say, how important are those two buckets, the rational consideration and the emotional consideration, or the emotional resistance that you're facing?
So I want to push back on the idea that it's a rational versus emotional thing, because the other challenge here is what's rational to someone is not rational to others. And I think that if you look at American society right now, you see that playing out in real time across many different channels, right? Something that those of us might feel is completely rational is offensive and hurtful, one way or the other. So that rationality emotional argument, I think, is almost a little bit of a trap. And every decision that we make is based on emotion. You buy gas because you're afraid of running out of gas and leaving your car stranded on the side of the road. You buy gum because you're afraid that your breath might stink, and maybe we're not doing a Zoom call, or maybe we're face to face with somebody, and we don't want to have stinky breath. We make coffee purchase decisions because we're looking for that emotional lift. Every purchase decision, every decision that has an emotional component to it. That idea that things are done on a completely rational basis, boy, that'd be great, because that would be a lot easier just to be able to lay out fact by fact. Hey, here's why you want to do X, Y, Z. There's going to be an emotional component of that. And that is where we need to do, certainly as leaders and certainly in the HR space, a much better job of listening. I think that is something where, if somebody asks me, like, what's your number one kind of sales hack, sales trick? It's listening. It's asking questions and then kind of shutting up, which is ironic because I'm here, spouting off for 20 minutes at a time. But
that.
when you're in a sales process, the really important idea here is you need to gather information from the person that you're looking to interact with, be that a customer or a coworker or a colleague, and determine what it is that they're looking to accomplish, what their needs are. Because the best thing that we can do is align what we're attempting to do with what their needs are. We talked a little bit earlier about an interaction I had the other day. I walked into an appointment, and the gentleman I was supposed to meet with wasn't there. His partner was there. He said, "Hey, I'm sorry. The other guy had to go address something at one of our other locations." He did one of these. He goes, "Why don't you go? Why don't you just tell me why you're better? Tell me, give me your song and dance." Right. And he kind of looked away, waiting, expecting me to do, be the tap dancing bear in his store, explaining why all my stuff is better than his stuff.
Well, jump into that rehearsed pitch, right?
Yeah. He wanted, because the pitch he can ignore, right? He doesn't have to listen to it. He's heard, there's probably been 3 guys that do what I do walk in. And I said to him, "Charlie, I apologize. I don't know that I am better than what you have. I don't even know who you have. I don't even know who you're working with currently." And he kind of looked at me. I said, I don't know what you want me to tell you. What's important to you is what I'm hoping to find out. When can we have a conversation about what's important to you? Because you want to know why I'm better. I have no idea who you're using. Are you happy with them? Is it your wife's brother? I mean, what's the opportunity here? And he said, "So you're not going to tell me a bunch of numbers?" I was like, I don't know what your numbers are. How can I tell you anything? And by doing that, I actually was able to secure another appointment with him to actually sit down and talk. And the temptation there for a lot of salespeople is to start the dance. It's to start that routine where my company does X, Y, Z, and the feature here is A, B, C, and the benefit to you is D, E, F. And that's not selling. That is, essentially a school presentation. You might as well put the PowerPoint presentation up and, start going through your slides. And you'll get as equal a response to that. You may, and I probably could have said some things to him that day that might have hit a need that he had. Everyone's concerned about how expensive things are. Costs are going up across the board everywhere. I probably could have talked to him about economic value and saving money and something like that. That might have worked. But I don't really want to get into a conversation of might have. I really want to find out about what he's doing, why he's doing what he's doing, and seeing if what I have to offer him can meet his needs. And as part of that process, I may stop that conversation and say, "Charlie, it sounds like you're really happy with what you have. It sounds like you're actually in great shape with the partner that you're currently working with. I don't know that I can improve it. I want to save some of your time. I definitely want to save some of my time. I think that you should stay where you are." And I've said that numerous times, because what does it benefit me to try to mislead somebody or to try to get them to make a change to my service or my product when there isn't really a real value? They're going to figure that out after a couple of months. And then where do we go? I can't walk in that shop ever again. I can't ask them for a referral. I can't, and with all businesses, we joke in Baltimore that Baltimore is really like a small Timor. I mean, it's a thing here, and everybody knows everybody else, or they know people who know somebody. And so, a lot of communities are like that. When you burn one bridge in a small business community, that gets around. And same thing within.
Uh-oh. The anticipation. I don't know what Mike was about to say. The same thing within, he said. So what I
Find your
hear.
offer.
Oh, he's coming back. I think. Are you back?
I am.
You
Didn't know
froze
I
up
left.
for a second. Oh,
Where did I break up?
and the same thing. You were saying that it's like small to more, and you know, relationships and all of that matter. Your reputation matters, and the same
Right.
thing.
And the same thing is applies internally. If we are selling internally, if we're communicating ideas or getting our theories and our concepts across our organization, if we do something that is without integrity, if we do something where we've tricked somebody into something, into getting them to do something that maybe they didn't want to do or didn't need to do, that's going to cause us a significant challenge within our own organizations. Because we will lose that trust, and building that trust and listening to our clients, both internal and external, is an absolute vital and necessary part of sales. You can't have sales without this concept of trust.
I'm so glad you said that. I always say that trust is a leader's most valuable commodity. You know, that like once you lose it, it's so hard to build it back. And you see this across the board, that it's not just the trust with your interactions with the individual. When we see layoffs, what we see is that the survivors lose trust in leadership often. And it's like, why? You didn't leave. You're still here. But they look to see how you acted, whether you acted with integrity and trust with the people who did leave. There's some great people that have these services that they actually help organizations with layoffs, where they help with job placement and job fairs and things like that. Yes, they hopefully care about those employees that are leaving, but really the employees that are staying are so crucial. That trust, keeping that trust and sense of integrity alive with them is so important. The thing that you were talking about in terms of listening and going out and really seeking feedback and information. So often what I see is that within the leadership circles, within HR circles, we package up this plan, and it's a beautiful plan because we spend so much time working on it, and we turn to all of our colleagues, and we get this together. But there's two issues with that. One's a minor issue but seems like the major issue, and the other one's a major issue that seems like a minor issue. The minor issue that seems like a major issue is that you're not getting a breadth of experience coming in. It's all the people that are within this department, right? So you might have blind spots that you're not aware of, or within leadership, you might have blind spots that you're not aware of. But the thing that seems maybe like a more minor issue that I think you're expressing is a much more major issue is that we spend our time selling by pitching this beautiful thing to our employees, and then when there's pushback, it's insulting, it's surprising, when in reality we should have been spending our time surveying and interviewing and focus grouping and getting feedback from our employees in every way, and really listening to the employees. One of the things that I see often, though, is that we'll take that step and then do nothing with it. And so my next question for you, I guess, is, so you listen and the person feels like you're listening. How important is that next step of doing something with what you heard from them? Within leadership, oftentimes we will survey, and we'll get these great survey responses. Sometimes we don't see them as very great because we take it personal, which I want to get into with you too. But we get these great responses, and then we just put it aside in a filing cabinet somewhere and never follow up with people about what we found or what they said. How important is that next step after the active listening, so they feel heard? You can't go back the next day and give your same pitch, right? Or say, all right, here are the numbers. How important is it to really integrate their feedback into the remainder of the process and the product, the service, or the change initiative?
I'm sorry, what was the question? I wasn't listening.
That was an essay question. Sorry.
So it's vital. The challenge I think that we have, especially within organizations, again, gets back to kind of the heart of what I know that you work on a daily basis, is we have an idea that we want to work on, and we develop our reasons for why this is a great idea. And maybe we talk to some folks and get some good positive feedback. I would argue that often what we end up doing is talking to our friends or folks that we know within the organization that are maybe on our side or have similar points of view. And so our ideas and our concepts or our programs tend to be a little skewed in how they're prepared and what they're looking to address. Look, confirmation bias is a real thing. It's something that's talked about all the time in research studies and in a ton of things. If you're looking for a certain set of data and you're focused on that, you will absolutely see that. One of the great things that we do with my kids is the punch buggy game, where we look for Volkswagen Beetles, and you'll be shocked at how many Volkswagen Beetles are still around.
Right.
And I get punched by my children constantly because they are now focused on that. Because when you're looking for something, it's really easy to find those things and be aware of them. And if we had changed that game to the Ford Explorer challenge, we'd find a whole bunch of Ford Explorers. Right. So the danger in sometimes preparing our ideas and programs, especially internally, is we don't do a good enough job getting out of our own experience and getting out of our own way. And when we do the focus groups and we hear the feedback that we maybe not want to hear, we tend to discount that because it's not what we were hoping to hear. Right. And there's throughout the history of business a ton of these examples where, new Coke comes to mind. Somebody thought that was a fantastic idea. They tried to rebrand an iconic soda. And it took some really amazing marketing work to get the Coke Classic name resurrected. But for a while there, that new Coke was an absolute disaster. But somebody had marketing and somebody had, figured out that this was the answer for them and that this was going to be a great thing. And, the only people celebrating new Coke were Pepsi. I mean, I think that really helped, revive that battle. So we need to be really careful and really responsive. And one thing that I'm certainly have been guilty of, and I know that something we've talked about in the past has been, we get really married to our mistakes. Mm-hmm. And we get invested in the idea that I have made this decision, and if I go back on it now, it's going to look like I didn't know what I was doing. And I see this in sales all the time. I work with controllers and I work with accountants and I work with CFOs where their position, their relationship with their current provider is really bad. And it's because of actions that have happened from the provider. My internal partner is not responsible for any of the mistakes that have happened, but because they got tricked or they got fooled or they weren't, they feel like they made a mistake, it's really hard to overcome that resistance because they get very invested in the mistake. Right. And if I admit that I was wrong, maybe I'm also wrong for the job. Maybe I didn't deserve the raise. Maybe I don't, whatever that argument happens inside. And that goes to a culture too, where we need to make it easier for people to admit mistakes and correct those mistakes.
Right. I always tell people, your employees already know that you're fallible. We always think we need to keep up this persona. They already know you're fallible. They want to know that you're fallible. Sometimes admitting to those mistakes is an incredibly powerful thing to do.
Yeah, and as I mentioned before, coming from back to kind of a sales perspective here, I have meetings. I'll have meetings this week and definitely meetings next week where I'll listen to what the client or the prospect's needs are, and what I have to offer isn't going to be a good fit, or I need to do more research on what I have. I was in a meeting yesterday, heard about what they needed. There were two kind of competing ideas of what their needs were. I've done research this morning to make sure that we're putting together something that is a good fit. And when I present the solution, it's using his own words back to him saying, hey, you mentioned this, and you mentioned this. Here's how we solve that problem. Had I just decided to walk in yesterday and present him an idea without finding out all of the things that he's talking about, would have been a very short meeting, because he wasn't necessarily thinking about what I do in certain ways. So, having that ability to be flexible, to be open to new ideas, and be willing to adjust your approach to really meet the needs of your prospects, whether that's internal or external, is absolutely vital.
Yeah. So one of the things that I really respect about salespeople is their ability to put up with no after no after no, and rejection after rejection. I think that has a lot to do with what you're speaking about, with getting emotionally connected and invested in our own decision, and it becomes it becomes a part of us, and about our character, and therefore if anybody rejects it or challenges it, it's a personal attack. I know my own selling, when I'm ghosted or somebody says no, it either goes internally or externally. Either I start thinking I'm worthless or they're horrible. Either way, it gets ugly in my head. And instead of just saying this just wasn't the right time or the right fit or whatever, like there's so many different reasons why just they didn't need me at that time. And so when you're selling within an organization and you're selling change, and you've decided that this is the change process that we need, or maybe the higher ups decided it, and you have to be the change champion, right? And you've got to go out there and be the change champion or the change agent and really help with that, deliver that change. So your hands are kind of tied to an extent sometimes, but you start tying yourself into it and you take it so personally. I know that you are so involved. I think since I've known you for maybe a decade, right? You've been studying Stoicism, which for the first 7 or 8 years we knew each other, I just pretended I knew what you were talking about when you referred to Stoicism. But then it became clear because you started really getting into what it all means. But how does that come into play with your mental and emotional process when you're out there selling and you get rejected? How can somebody separate themselves and look at something objectively, and sort of take the emotion out of it, or at least the personal emotion out of it? And does that Stoicism stuff play into that, or is this another philosophy that you have?
So this is one of my favorite topics, and something I'm diving into real heavy, because it's been really fundamental for me, and kind of changing my approach. I want to mention a couple things. The first is there's this idea that Stoicism is this emotional robot. I don't feel anything. I am the Terminator. I just go through my day. And you see it in play with a lot of military stuff, and that's not the Stoicism I'm talking about. That's kind of like lowercase s Stoicism. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the capital S Stoicism, Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, some of those guys. So I do want to share just a brief story that kind of kicked off my journey onto this. About 10 years ago, I was going through an absolutely terrible time. I was in a bad place professionally. I was in a bad place personally, and I had come home from working a really horrible evening job, and was just feeling absolutely lost and just miserable. And it was a Thursday night. And it was 2011, and the football NFL playoffs had started. And at the time, Tim Tebow, of all people, Tim Tebow is playing for the Denver Broncos, and he's leading the Broncos against the Steelers. And he engineers this miraculous fourth quarter comeback. They tie the game, takes them into overtime. He marches the ball down the field, and then they win the game in overtime. Fantastic thing. And if you remember at the time, Tim Tebow was built up to be literally the second coming. I mean, there were articles about, Tebow being a religious experience. And I remember I'm watching the TV and I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, this guy's just going to get on the screen and just spout some nonsense. And whoever the reporter is after the game pulls up and she's, oh my God, Tim, that was the greatest comeback in NFL history. And, how about that? Does this justify your greatness to everyone? And Tim Tebow, who in that moment had earned the right to say, oh, hell yeah, I'm the greatest quarterback of all time. Tim Tebow in that moment had the presence of mind and the humility of his ego to say, I don't know anything about that. I focus on my attitude, my effort, and my focus. And came out and just tried to do my best. And that blew me away, because if anyone had earned the right to self-congratulate in that moment, where he had just won this NFL playoff game, where everybody, the professionals all doubted that he could do it. And he said, no, I focus on my attitude, effort, and focus. And that's something that, I tell my kids on almost a daily basis, because that comes into this really key tenet of Stoicism called the dichotomy of control. And the dichotomy of control teaches us that there are some things that we can absolutely control. If you think about Tim's phrasing of it, our attitude, our effort, our focus, absolutely within our control. What's not within our control is how other people respond to us. What's not in our control is the result. We may get some really negative comments on our water cooler talk today, David, and that would break my heart. But I don't control how other people perceive what we say. We're trying to have a good conversation. I hope it's valuable to folks.
Nobody's thrown up any hate yet, and that's saying a lot, because we are on Twitter.
And I mentioned the Yankees too, so that typically gets me at least. I'm surprised Celeste hasn't come through with some anti-Yankee hate.
Right.
So we are able to control a very limited amount of things, and where people's, I think, struggle often is they try to control so many things that are absolutely outside their control. Mm-hmm. If you've ever sat before a TV, and I'm a huge soccer fan, and this summer there were some great, absolutely fantastic games that ended in penalty shootouts, where you are on the edge of your seat, willing, this player to put the ball in the net, or willing the goalie to make a stop. Those things are outside of our control. We still get emotionally invested in them. We still, expend a lot of energy for it. And that can be a very, enjoyable thing. But what if we're at work and we make an amazing pitch to our manager as to why we want to work from home full time, and that gets rejected? Does that mean that we're worthless? Does that mean that we aren't valuable to the company? Not necessarily. Did we do our best to put the case forward? Did we have the right attitude? Did we have the right effort? Did we have the right focus going into that meeting? And so for me, that idea of this dichotomy of control has really changed sales for me, and taken a lot of the negativity from the reaction away. I try to look at every interaction as an opportunity to learn, and I don't actually mind getting no. You're going to get no's in sales. You're going to get turned down for the ideas that you present to your colleagues and to your managers, and often to your direct reports. And the idea here is that we want to focus on the effort, and we want to focus on the attitude of how we go about doing things, and kind of divorce ourselves from necessarily the results. One of the biggest mistakes that I see when I look at sales organization is everyone is focused on the result. Did you sell $10,000 this month? Did you hit our quarterly projections? And the challenge with that is, by the time you realize that your team or your staff or your salesperson has missed those numbers, it's too late to do anything about it.
Right.
It's too late. You can't go back in time and start a sales process, that takes 3 months or that takes 2 weeks. By the time that you realize that you've missed the number, you've missed the boat on that. And what we should be thinking about is what action, what activity, what things can we focus on now that drive the results, rather than focusing on the results.
Yeah, yeah, and we've gone back and forth on this specific topic so often. And as you're saying this, I'm thinking about the direction we're going in so many organizations. And this was happening pre-COVID, but it's now, as organizations are going to remote and hybrid environments. We're going down this path now where I, as an IO, and other IOs out there are making the recommendations that perhaps performance reviews in the past have been too focused on who's there for, like, at their desk at 9 o'clock until 5 o'clock, and that's how you measure good work, etc. That's a process, and we're saying no. Let's measure based on results. Especially, that's the way to micromanage less, right? When you have people working from home, and it's like you can't really check on the process, right? It's not, doesn't help to check on the process. Who cares if they're at their desk? Who cares what they're doing, or if they're working at 2 o'clock in the morning or at 2 o'clock in the afternoon? We're looking more at the objective results. So I don't know how that translates, if it translates in that sense.
Well, so I don't want to say that results aren't important. If a salesperson isn't selling anything, then that's not a great salesperson. And at times I have not been a great salesperson. I think the idea is if you're doing a review, then it's absolutely legitimate to look at results, because that is, hey, we're going to review your performance. On a management basis, you've got somebody that you're trying to manage, you have to understand what goes into achieving the result. And so, I want to stick to sales because it's the lane I know best, and I won't get too far out over my skis. If we're working with someone and they've got a goal that they're trying to hit, and let's say that goal is, they want to hit, $50,000 worth of revenue. Well, you have to start with that goal in mind, start with the end in mind, and we work our way backwards to the daily activity that it's going to require to do that. And the thing that, you mentioned earlier, that you and I are accountability partners, this is something that we work on every week, where it's, hey, did you do the activity this week or last week that you said you were going to do to achieve the results that you wanted?
Right.
And while the results are what we're hoping to achieve, it's really that shorter time frame where we're controlling for our effort, where we're controlling for the activity. My goal is to sign up 30 new accounts by the end of the year. And I know that it's going to take me probably 100 conversations with business owners to make that happen. So if I know I've got 4 months left in the year, and we've got some holiday weeks thrown in there too, so let's call it 10 weeks, I need to have 10 conversations with business owners in the next every 10 conversations every week for the next 10 weeks to get my 100 conversations to get the 30 accounts to sign.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm able to use metrics to kind of back into what that activity should look like. So how do I get to 10 conversations a week? Well, I probably have to call maybe 15 people. So that's 150 calls or 150 face-to-face drop-ins every week to get the 10 conversations to get the 30 clients. Again, we're going backwards. We start with our results that we want to achieve, and we work backwards to get to the activity that's going to produce those results.
Right.
I think the challenge becomes when we don't understand what activities actually produce the results. And you mentioned, you weren't logged in at 8:15 a.m. You need to log in at 8:15 a.m. Well, why does that produce the result that we're looking for? Why does that specific activity actually help us achieve that thing? And if it does, and you can lay that out, then that's a conversation you have with that employee about why that's important. Mm-hmm. But if it's an arbitrary thing where I like my whole team to be online by 8:15, that's not in service of what we're trying to accomplish. Why the hell are we doing it?
Right. For the record, you're a much stricter manager than me. I said 9. You said 8:15. But what I'm hearing you say is kind of like back to the Tim Tebow example. Tim Tebow, in your example, was very focused on his efforts and his habits and what got him to that victory. That's the difference maybe between self-management and management of others, because you're self-managing. Tim Tebow probably was pretty invested in winning that game. Like, that's a good thing for him. His coaches, maybe even more so, right? They wanted to, at the end of the day, if you're putting in all the effort and you're not having the results, your coach is going to cut you, right? Unless maybe you're a big personality like that. There's other ways to fill seats, right? But maybe that's the answer, that there's like a little bit of a difference between self-management and management of others, and where they combine is the manager's ability to coach others on their behaviors and habits and really help them along, but when they're judging performance, to look a little bit more objectively. Because otherwise things can get troublesome when you're looking at things less objectively, and they're mushy and harder to measure sometimes.
Yeah, there is an absolute fantastic television show that I want to encourage everyone, if you can get a trial, or if you want to invest the money on Apple Plus, called Ted Lasso.
You're the guy. You're the guy watching Apple Plus.
Yeah, that's me, and it's a terrific show because it really takes a lot of that idea of what it means to be a coach and puts it into some real good contrast with what we think of as a coach. And what I imagine was happening in that Denver Broncos practices is that the coaches are evaluating the players to see where they're lacking, because they have an idea of what it's going to take to win a game, right? You've got a strategy. And maybe Tim Tebow, doesn't have the best feet, so they need to account for the idea that they've got to build a game plan that accounts for him not being the most mobile, right? And maybe you've got an employee that is technically amazing, but if you put him in front of a client or you put him in front of another person, he literally can't speak, or she can't, is so socially uncomfortable that they can't speak. My wife is a manager of an IT department, and sometimes struggles with that exact thing, where you've got some absolutely amazingly technically gifted people that when you try to put them in front to do a presentation, it's really uncomfortable because that is not one of their strong points.
So people work with, they've got it all here and they just need help getting it out here. Yeah.
And so that becomes the challenge for the manager of making sure that we are providing for and understanding our strengths and our weaknesses within our team, and not setting somebody else up to fail. Mm-hmm. Right? If Tim Tebow can't run or scramble outside the pocket, you can't build a game plan that is a scrambling quarterback running plan. Think Lamar Jackson in Baltimore. You have no idea what he's going to do, because he can run on you, he can throw, he can do whatever. Tim Tebow was not much of a runner, and God love you, Tim. I'm right there with you. I'm definitely not much of a runner myself. So you can't build a game plan for a weakness of your team, and if you're doing that, you've got to take some ownership of it, because as a manager, as someone that's responsible for the success of your team, you really have to kind of aim that to help them succeed. And the wonderful part about the Ted Lasso show is he says it early on, is his job isn't necessarily to win soccer games. His job is to make people the best versions of themselves. And that sounds kind of corny and cheesy, but what are we looking to really accomplish within our organization? If we really care about our people, if we really care about the mission of what we're up to, if we really care, we should be looking to set people up for success, for growth, for development. We shouldn't be looking to put them in situations where they end up looking terrible, get really uncomfortable, and want to quit because you made them do a sales presentation, or you made them do a presentation to the entire company when public speaking terrifies them. And that's that's our challenge for management. It's a challenge for any leader. Is our people the most vital and valuable thing that we've got? Have to be cared for and set up to succeed and to grow.
Yeah, well said. I think we're running out of time now, but I think Mike, you really covered some really important things. You mentioned New Coke, Tim Tebow. What else aged you today?
My beloved New York Yankees. I mean, we really got some good traction.
Right. So, but really, the value of looking at what we do within HR, within IO, within leadership through a sales perspective is really valuable to sort of step out and look at it from a different angle. Last week, we spoke about retirement, but in terms of wellness instead of financial wellness, emotional wellness, and physical wellness. It's really great when you can take a look at something from a different angle, and that's really what you do in sales. And especially bring in your stoicism, which we didn't get a chance to dive as deep into, but maybe we'll have you back to really tackle that. But really to offer us this view on sales is really invaluable. So thank you for that. And you all can reach out directly to Mike. He's got a name and everything right here. If you lift your phone and just hover it right over his QR code, that'll get you to his LinkedIn, connect with him, message him. And I'm sure Mike would love to talk to, first of all, if you're in the Delmarva region, where's your if you're anywhere in the world and you want a credit card terminal or payment, I'll let you say this. Give your pitch.
So would love to talk with businesses about if they take electronic payments, whether that's ACH, credit cards, if it's invoices that you're sending out, whether you've got a POS systems in retail or restaurant environments. Would love to have a conversation to see if my partners are a good fit for you.
Great. And if you want to reach out to Mike about any of his philosophy on sales and leadership and really life, we didn't even dip our toes into the extent of this guy's life and growth and development. It's really amazing. I highly recommend that you connect directly with Mike. And next week, we are going to be speaking with Brittany Eisenman. This is going to be so exciting. We're going to be speaking with Brittany. The topic is, what the heck is an IO psychologist? How to know when you need one and how to become one. Brittany is an IO psychology practitioner, consultant. She's the CEO and lead strategist at 𝗩𝗓𝗪𝒡. And she just has this incredible knowledge and delivery when she speaks about, and very passionately about, the work that IOs do. And if you don't know what an industrial organizational psychologist is, I highly recommend you tune in. And if you know what they are, and you're interested in making a career shift or going to school for IO, I highly suggest that you tune in as well. We're gonna talk everything IO. Mike, it has been an absolute pleasure. Do you have any final thoughts for us? And do you have any homework to send people out with? Something that we could do today to help us sell from inside our organization?
I think I'd want to leave you with a couple of things. The first thing is asking questions is vital. Building trust, absolutely going to make any sort of change or implementation that you're looking to do much smoother. I would encourage anyone that has any interest in kind of philosophy, or maybe even some of the things I said about Stoicism might be interesting. Ryan Holiday has a great book called "The Obstacle Is the Way." It's a great jumping off point. It's one of the things that I recommend to folks that I work with as a really great place to start digging into some of that stuff. And thank you, David, for the time, and enjoy every conversation we get to have together, and appreciate you having me on.
Thank you, and thank you all for tuning in today. If you're watching this on the rewatch, please leave comments. Let us know you were here. Any questions? Anything? Any sort of insulting things you have to say about sales? Challenges that you have about sales? Leave them in the comments wherever you might be viewing this, and Mike and I will continue to interact with these comments. So thank you so much, Mike, and thank you all for being here. Have a great week. See you next time.